Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that, good for us. We don't see race, man. I'm Matt,
I'm Brian.
And I'm Andrew.
and we
But you can
are
call me Drew.
Nope, not gonna do that.
telling you that.
Nope. All right, I was going back to an old season of The Office.
Nailed it. Back to when hashtag Michael was still alive. Well, we have
He's not
left.
dead.
No, he is. He's dead. If he's not on the show, he's dead to us.
It's a zombie in the finale.
I know what she said. All right, guys. So you know the drill. If you've been listening to these Office episodes, we have been doing them for the last month. We have guests on. We were supposed to have guests, plural this time, but one of our Andrews wasn't able to be here. And so we are joined by our special guest host, Andrew Brower. He joined us for the Halo episode that we did. And so he is back in black for the second time. And we're going to be talking about Office season 8 and 9, the worst Office seasons, right?
Well, it depends on who you ask, but yeah, I think so.
Andrew, I think.
I don't hate him as much as a lot of people do.
How about you, Andrew?
It when I was watching this like live on TV, however many years ago, they were probably the worst, just because like the sheer raw feeling of Michael leaving still hit you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I have rewatched it, probably season 8, 9, 50, 60 times since it's come out. I can appreciate season 8 and 9. I think some of the earlier seasons, like 1 and 2, are probably lower than 8 and 9 for me, because I think there's some really cool character development that you've gone through and that you can really appreciate in season 8 and 9 that comes out.
I might agree with you on season 1, but I also have a really good fondness for season 2. But I agree, there is a lot of good in season 8 and 9, which we'll get to. More so 8. I like 8 better than 9, I think. I used to say the opposite, but I think we'll get to it.
Yeah, there's parts that I like of 8.
Yeah. Also, before I forget, so we have a habit of calling out whenever one of our guest hosts has a kid, and I figured I'd save it since, Andrew, you're on now. So I'll say for our listeners, congratulations to Andrew for having his third kid a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Brian.
I was in Wilmer.
Matt was there for the birth, but he wasn't in the hospital.
I wasn't. No, they didn't let me in. I kicked the door in, and they're like, "No, you got to go, man."
You were like Michael when Pam was having her baby.
I had my Sharpie ready, and I was going to mark it for you. Did you mark your baby? Did you make sure
I did.
You got the right one?
Yep, we got the right one.
Yeah, I figure in the past we've called out Mike and Dan, so I figured now we'll call out Andrew.
Thank you.
There you go. Well, let's jump into season 8. As much fun as babies are,
yeah.
You're here for The Office. So
yes.
Season 8, I will agree that I had to lower my standards, but once I lowered them, then I was like, oh, actually, there's a lot to like in these seasons. And so season 8 had some good stuff that happened. So let's start with best cold opening. So what do you guys think for season 8? What's the best cold open?
Isn't that this? Oh, maybe I'm thinking of season 7.
I think
it's season 7 I'm thinking of.
My favorite one is it's only my favorite because of Stanley, which is in Doomsday when Andy is singing Closing Time. And he's annoying everybody, and then all of a sudden Stanley comes out singing along with him. And you realize of course he's gonna sing along. That means because he has the talking head. The song means I get to go home. And now it's my favorite song.
This season actually had some really good cold opens.
Season 8. Yes, the cold open. Now I know which one I was going to say.
Go for it.
It's the one when they're down in Tallahassee and Jim's like, I'm on the 2-kid schedule.
Oh, yes.
He does the elaborate prank on Dwight of basically being murdered in the hotel room.
Yep.
He wrote on the wall and said it was Dwight, and he falls out of the closet.
He had money out of a briefcase.
Yes.
Yes.
That was a great, all of that was really good too, because it also it set the stage for what was going to be going on in that episode. And so when Dwight's waking everyone up, each one is pretty funny. Him getting kicked in the face by Aaron, and Aaron seductively waking up Ryan, and what the heck? And then what do they do?
Like Stanley's nose.
That's right,
because they can't get Stanley up.
And then it culminates with a Jim prank, which is one of his best Jim pranks. It was really good.
Yeah.
That was on my list. I think I put that as my number here. I wanted to just point out too, I've thought this so many times because I've rewatched The Office. I've rewatched all of these episodes in the last 2 months or so, 3 months since we've been doing this. And you start to see them use the same jokes. So, like, for instance, one of the cold opens is Andy asks Aaron to like bring in like an important thing, like, oh, you've got a phone call. And that is the third time that they have done that joke. They did it twice with Michael, and then they did it this time too, because they did the thing with him and Jan as the boss, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. And then they did it again with him and Ryan, except for this time Ryan's like, no, I insist. Yeah, the customer comes first.
Oh yeah, and then, like, hey buddy.
Yeah, exactly. And now they did it again. I mean, they did.
Are you also considering the time when they did the sticky note? Because that's kind of along the same premise.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, 100%. So I just wanted to highlight that because there's a lot of these that I'm probably going to forget, but there's a lot of like, yeah, they've done that joke in a version before. But the one that I actually love for cold open is why waste time with your do trick.
Yes.
I mean, and then they really call out, like, that's almost like the Flanderization of Kevin. Oscar calls it out, like, he was never this bad. When they're trying to be like, yeah, he's always been like this. Like, no, he wasn't.
No, Oscar doesn't call it out. Jim does, because Oscar and Angela are kind of like, Angela especially, she's like, he's always been like this. And so I like, it's a natural progression too of it. There's a lot of funny stuff that happens because it is the like Jim comes over, asks him to do it, and like, wait, what? When he first responds to him, and then they're like, oh, should we call the hospital? Is there something wrong? And then like Andy and again Andy, here's another joke that they reused. Andy does this same thing that Michael does to him when he does like the baby talk, and they actually use the phrase like the office speech dress code, and they use that same joke a second time with him. And but the whole thing is funny, and like it's a really great open.
Yeah,
there's some really good opens. Like after reading like the list of cold opens and stuff, there's some really funny ones. And one that I want to highlight, not that it's funny, but it just shows that The Office was made in like a different political climate than we are today. And like over half the jokes would be like, get the show cut off TV.
Yeah,
it's the season finale where Oscar's making It Gets Better About Being Gay.
Oh yeah.
And like everyone just like keeps interrupting him and like coming in around him and just like piling on. And
doesn't it end with Kevin getting hit in the face?
Yes. So it's
and
they make a lot of those type of jokes in this. Not that's a joke, but it's like make light of that. And
yeah,
it's what makes it so like those type of jokes and that type of lightheartedness, and like it's just a different time that I think people can appreciate it.
Yeah. And you know, another one that I think really dates it, as this was like really in the early 2010s, was the planking, because there was like a couple year window when everybody was planking, and then that just kind of stopped.
Yeah, and then that's the season opener, and in season 6, the season opener is parkour. So it's like that's the second time that they've taken a cultural phenomenon and be like, we got to.
They did parkour way better though than the planking.
Yeah.
How much you want to bet if The Office went one more season, they would have done a Harlem Shake?
They did reference Gangnam Style.
Yep.
They referenced that a couple times in these seasons. So anyway, as I was saying about Kevin, because I'll transition this way. Because that actually for me was the most gifable. I felt like you were do trick. I think that's just a hilarious gif, and I've used that a number of times, and people always like enjoy that reference. I don't know exactly like how it just comes up, but it's like, you know, you'll type something and then you make a typo, or you like just use crappy English or something, and someone calls you out on it. Easily throw that in there.
Yeah. My gifable moment, I have two of them. They both involve Dwight. I think it's either got to be the elaborate garden party dance that he does at the end of that with like his whole crew, or another Dwight, almost like a dance when he's imitating the bed bugs like strut in his underwear in the hotel room.
I love the Jim line. Oh, so smug, like he thought it was funny. Hilarious.
Yeah.
What do you got, Andrew? What's most memeable or gifable moment?
I think a good one is towards the end of the season. I think it's it's in the cold open of the second to last episode, is when Dwight and Gabe. Oh no, it's in that same episode. It might be in that same episode. It's like Dwight and Gabe have like those leg curl competitions.
Oh yeah, and then it turns into the slumber party.
Yes, but I think also in that same one, like he goes into the or like into like not it's not it's by the bathrooms, that break room.
Yeah.
And Dwight walks in on Gabe like making protein powder or making a protein shake, and Dwight's like, "Oh, you cut that stuff with water? Why don't you just take estrogen?" And then he like just takes a scoop and like throws it in his mouth and like coughs up and like powder goes everywhere. And then he kisses his muscles and he's like, "That's how daddy feeds you," or something.
It's like it's like the right amount of cringe where
Yes,
it'd be cringe if it was anyone but Dwight.
Yeah. Yeah,
I've used that meme, or like that clip I've used a few times. The estrogen part. I thought that was like it's just a funny one liner.
Yeah.
Let's stay on good vibes going. Let's keep them going. So what would you say? Let's look at the storylines of season 8. What do you think is the best storyline?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think my favorite storyline that comes out in season 8 is between Dwight and Jim, but in a way of they go from like Jim always pranking Dwight and them becoming like friends. And this happens. My big one is when they go down to Tallahassee, and Robert California tells Jim that he's going to scrap the idea for the store and pretty much fire anyone that is a part of that. And he stops Dwight by all costs by going to that like final presentation.
Yeah.
Because even though Dwight annoys him and like and all that like from the previous seasons, deep down like Jim knows like he's good friends and best friends with Dwight, and he can't see, even though he might not, he likes to prank him and thinks he might be annoying and stuff, but deep down he knows that he wants to keep Dwight around, and he's going to do whatever it costs to do that. And so I mean, you get that funny scene of Dwight like winding up his feet to like try to run faster and run it like parkour across the wall, and I think that just shows that was like a big turning point, I think, in like their friendship, at least how the show portrayed it. Showing that Jim actually deep down cares for Dwight.
And that also continued later on when they had the turf war against that other guy who kept trying to steal their clients, I think. And then it was Dwight and Jim working together in that episode. I think that was in season 8 when they made up the fictional client for them together.
Yes. Well, not the fictional client. It was the fictional salesman too that the guy was mad at, but it was Robert California had drunkenly shut down a branch, and all of these clients are up for grabs. And so this other salesman from another branch comes in, is like, and he's like, "Who are these people that are calling?" And so then they're the ones who have to like try and get the big client, and that Andy ends up getting and wins back the Dunder Mifflin that way.
Yeah. But I mean, we see there's some softening moments of Jim and Dwight throughout the years, but I think you're right, Andrew. Season 8 is when it really starts to come to a head of like they're not completely best friends, and there's still going to be more Jim pranks, but they're more on the same page. They're more cool with each other starting at this season.
And they needed to develop that relationship without Michael. They needed it to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mine is also in Florida. Like, well, the spot you gave was in Florida. My Florida part, I liked all of like the Florida stuff.
Me too.
Because that was unique and that was different than what they had been doing, and they needed like that shot in the arm. And so I thought the storyline was really good. But specifically, we got Florida Stanley out of it.
Yeah. My answer is not going to be Florida, but it almost was. Florida, I think, is that whole string of episodes. I think they had a really good mix of people. I maybe could have done without the whole Kelly or Aaron and Ryan stuff, but I mean, Jim, Dwight, Stanley, especially, it was a great mix of people. I mean, even Todd Packer was interesting in down in Florida.
Yeah, the most I ever liked having Packer on screen, and that was just to get like one upped by Dwight
And that
multiple
was,
times.
Yeah.
I feel like that was the one time that Nellie wasn't awful. Like when she was a little bit down in Florida, like when
Yeah.
she comes back and does everything in Scranton, she gets kind of annoying. But
Oh yeah. I don't think they should have brought her back from Florida. I think they should have left her in Florida. But she wasn't bad in Florida for those. She was like not only the villain, but kind of like the catalyst for that storyline. And
Yep.
just taking, I've said it before in some of our other episodes, it's fun when you take a group of our office characters out of the office and see how they react. And that Florida storyline is a big part of why I like season 8. But mine
Yeah.
is a storyline that I like in season 8 and then tanks in season 9, which is Andy as manager. I think at first it is a good mix. He was a good pick to replace Michael because he has a lot of the same qualities. He's still, a little bit awkward, a little bit not like the most commanding presence as authority. He kind of has that. Like I think a lot of the same. I could have seen the incentive storyline where he's trying to make the point system make them work better. I could have seen that be a Michael thing as well. I think that
yeah,
fit well with Andy
it's
at first.
it's interesting that you say that, Brian, because it kind of segues into something I wanted to point out in this. Why I think season 8 people didn't like.
Yeah.
I think they did a perfect job in casting Andy for manager because of exactly what you said. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of a push. Like he lets you get away with stuff like Michael did.
Mm-hmm.
He tries to be funny, he tries to be your friend, and it just works, right? It's like how it's even though Michael wasn't like however Michael managed, it worked right
Mm-hmm.
in the show, and Andy did a great job with that. I think what we could see in season 8 was tough was the fact that when Robert California was the next step up. I know he's like the CEO of it because he took over Joe Bennett, but
Mm-hmm.
he was at the office a lot and like managed people over Andy.
Yeah.
And we see this also as like a parallel when earlier in the seasons when now I'm blanking on his name. It's uh,
Charles Minor.
Charles Miner comes in.
Yeah.
I don't think the show succeeds or does very well when there is a high authority figure over the branch manager that works closely. Because I don't think The Office really did the episodes where Charles Miner was there did great. The only thing that saved it was Michael being extra Michael and creating his own paper company. But
Yeah.
when it went back to like the actual office without Michael in it, because he's off, creating his own paper company, it didn't have the right feel as the office in the same open, free
Yeah. It was more constricted.
flow of an office. Like the characters can't really be them full selves with those bosses there. And I think that's kind of what hurt season 8, in my opinion, was okay, we lost Michael,
Yeah.
which is a big, and when Robert California's there, nobody knows how to act because he's
Mhm.
such an awkward character
Yeah.
and is a boss. And so I don't think you could always see their true personalities come out in season 8.
Yeah.
Well,
because
and
of
I
that.
liked that idea early on. I thought that was a really cool thing of like giving him that sort of mystique. And so I actually was thinking about this, but I really like the point you make. But what I was thinking ahead of time was like, what if they would have made Andy the opposite Michael Scott, where Michael Scott was a tremendous salesman because Andy was such a terrible salesman. He was like a super competent manager.
Mhm.
But then we would have Robert California come along, and when he's there, Andy still has that like, I'm trying to perform for you. I don't know who I like
Mhm.
that side of him that we did see. It would keep that same dynamic he had with Robert.
Yeah.
But that like I think there's comedy to be had in him doing his job really well, but that Robert is never able to see it.
Yeah. Like, did we ever see Andy excel at his job in any job, really? I mean, he had a few moments as manager, like when he realized that, his, craziness, like when he got the tattoo was bringing that office together, but it wasn't like Michael, like we saw time and time again that Michael was a great salesman. Like you said, Andy doesn't have that. So I think that's what's missing with Andy, and is that he was never shown to excel at sales or management.
He excelled at interviews though.
Yeah.
The interviews. All right. So that's the best storyline. Couple different ones we talked about. What's the worst storyline? And I think that we might all have the same one. Would be my guess. And for me, it's Nellie taking Andy's job. Just all of that was terrible.
Yes. The brief one, the other way that you could say is the whole Kathy hitting on Jim. But the reason that's not my least favorite is because it was never reciprocated. Like Jim never entertained it at all.
Yeah.
But then, yeah.
There's some people who say, like, they talk about how cringy that episode is where she's hitting on him. And I don't find it cringy. I find it endearing for Jim and Pam because Jim, maybe he doesn't do everything right. Like, he needed to be more forceful at a certain point to get her out of there. But, like, he did things as right as you could get, of like calling his wife right away and like staying away. And so he did a good like job of it. And even though he admitted early on in that season that he did find her objectively attractive. So it's not that he didn't. He just was like, no, there's no way. I'm not even.
There's interesting. I've read some fan theory on that whole Kathy thing in Florida. And basically it's saying that I wonder if something did happen down there in Florida, because that then leads into Pam kind of being extra weary and leery when like Jim's hiding something from her in season 9 about the new job.
That could be.
I don't know. Like, I don't think so. I think, Matt, I'm more along your lines, but that was a fan theory that I've read out there about that whole Kathy.
Yeah. Well, and you also got to play devil's advocate. If you realize the whole show is framed with the documentary, and it's like if we're seeing Kathy hitting on Jim, that means the cameras are seeing that, and Jim would never. I mean, I don't think he would anyways, but he's not going to make a move on Kathy when the cameras are there. So technically, you could say that something happened when the cameras weren't around, but again, I don't think so.
But
some of our listeners are probably screaming at us.
If you look at how the cameras were in that episode, they're across the street. They're getting it from outside of the room. And when what's his name busts in, like Dwight busts in or Stanley would follow in, because we do get shots in the room, but there isn't a cameraman in that room with them. And they make a point of that he's across the street. And then they even in the 9th season talk about how like, oh my gosh, you were filming this whole time. You filmed when we were, etc. So he probably didn't even think he was being filmed at that time.
There you go.
I got lots to say about season 9 on some of the stuff topics that we're talking about. So I'm excited to get to that season.
So we can go back then to
to Nellie.
That kind of what you would say too.
That first episode when she comes back and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna take over and have Angela deduct Andy's pay." Like that is like one of the most infuriating I've been.
Yeah.
And then like Robert doesn't do anything about it.
No.
It's like I don't feel like that's Robert's like how he would like doesn't go along with how he is, I don't feel like.
The only thing is that wasn't he trying to like sleep with Nellie at this point, or was that earlier?
Was but like, so that is believable enough of a reason, but it's just like like that's as far as they get, is I guess it's believable enough that people would act this way. No, people wouldn't act that way. No one would be okay with like, okay, this person can come in, because all of a sudden no one feels secure at that job. Everything feels like at any point we're replaceable, as long as someone comes in and fills my seat, I'm replaced.
Especially with like Mike or Robert California just like basically fired her because of like how crappy the idea was for that store, and then all of a sudden he's okay with her just taking that position.
Yep.
Andy wasn't like so hated that everybody else would be just okay with him being ousted.
If this was season 9 Andy when he was coming back, I get it, but like he was still likable and lovable and just that goofy character that you like.
At first I was thinking like, oh, why is Angela going against it? Like, oh well, they are exes, but like no, like she cheated on him, so she wouldn't have any reason to be mad at him.
In season 9 there's a number of times that I feel like they do like these jump the shark moments, and that's one of my bigger complaints about season 9, is it just feels so much more larger than life. sure. But this is one of those other moments where it's like, this is also extremely jump the shark, unbelievable type of thing. And they just take these sorts of ideas and they do more of them in the next season that is just so unbelievable.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep. So Nelly sucks, but I will say it because we might talk about her in season 9, but I'm gonna say it now. I like her a lot better in season 9.
I
We were
think
doing our office rankings. We were like, Nelly's not good, etc. She got a lot better in season 9.
I would agree with that.
agreed, but I was just kind of indifferent. I never liked her. She was
Yeah.
just kind of like there. I didn't hate her as much in season 9, I should say.
I end up like on repeats, on rewatches. I like her because you know that we're gonna get that, and so it's like there's some fun things like when they do the radio for Dunder Mifflin and they fake the whole thing, and Nelly's the host. She does such a fun job with that, and you really enjoy her and Pam and all that whole dynamic, everything that they're doing. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get into the dirty and the dungy of the worst episode before we get to the best episode. What is the worst episode of season 8?
Worst episode of season 8.
I think we mentioned it earlier. It was, for me, it's Pam's replacement, which is when they bring in Kathy and they're all trying to prove that Jim finds her attractive. And at the same time, the other storyline is that Daryl, Andy, and Kevin get overtaken by Robert and his group doing their band. They get kicked out of their own band.
Yeah.
It's just,
that's pretty crappy episode.
Yeah. That's what I would say.
The Jim, Pam, Dwight thing, funny. There's a little bit of the creativity that I like of Pam coming up with these tests that like Kelly has of like the matchmaker test and stuff like that. There's a little bit of that uniqueness, but then how does the conflict end? He potentially has high blood pressure. Oh, okay. That's the end of the conflict. I felt like that was such a stupid like ending to it because they didn't resolve the actual issue. They just pivoted to like, oh, I'm from one emotional train to another. Yep.
I would probably throw in just the episode where, that whole Nelly thing goes down, right? I just think it's such an annoying part of the show, like when she takes over as boss.
Is that welcome party that you're talking about?
No, that's the next episode. I'm looking it up.
Okay.
It is Get the Girl. So
it's like you start off so good, right? Because he's going down to Florida. He's getting Aaron. He's saying, I need to be with you, and all of that. And then you end it by like having this just like such an awful part like with Nelly, and just that doesn't seem to go with the Office theme and feel, right? Of how like that whole transition with her taking his job. It starts off so good and you love it because it's like Andy and Aaron are back together and you want them together because they're good together. And then you just like throw in this awkward, weird, like, and then everyone goes with it. It's like everyone was just like supporting him to like get Aaron and like they should be together and all this. And then they just like turn on him.
And the Florida plot in that time of him getting Aaron back and like the conversations they have and how the house that she's living with is like egging him on of like attacking him, and that's not great. But I felt like it got worse the next episode where they continued that storyline in Welcome Party, but then you added the extra pain of him breaking up with Jessica at that bachelorette party that they stop at. I felt like that was a worse episode, even though it has Brett
I was just going to say, do you know who's in there? Murray himself.
Brett Gelman is tremendous. The funniest part of that. And like Brett Gelman is just so good of being the like battered magician, and eventually just turns to Jim like, you didn't do that on purpose, did you?
Well, and I love
he's great in that.
I don't know why, but I love Robert California's line delivery of, why is Jim treating the magician poorly?
And I really liked you. this isn't best meme, but I pulled out that line and used it as a meme for when Doctor Strange 2 came out, and John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic is chastising Doctor Strange.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's just like that fits perfectly. Why is Jim treating the magician so poorly?
That is perfect.
All right, so that's worst episode. What do you guys have for best episode?
Why don't you guys go first? Because I have a few, and then if you guys knock out some of my list, then that'll make it easier for me. I'm going to
All
cheat.
right, I'll say Tallahassee because I think that it has
Yep.
to be one of the Florida
was
episodes.
that was on my list.
So we talked about the cold open to Tallahassee, how it started. And then it's also a lot of fun to see Dwight trying to carry on and establish himself as this VP higher up when he's dealing with appendicitis.
Yeah. And he said, I talked earlier, Florida Stanley.
Is that the episode that he's trying to figure out what he has, and Jim says he like poisoned him?
Yes.
And like he calls like that's a good part of the season. So
and there's like, no, Dwight, I didn't poison you.
And I believe that episode is the one that has the B plot of Andy taking over for a receptionist for a day and doing really well at it.
Oh, so Andy did excel at a job. He excelled at reception.
And like that's why it's like he should have been a really good manager, because it's fun to see people do well at something. It's fun to root for someone.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah. So Andrew, what do you got for a favorite episode?
I'd go along with Matt too. That whole like Florida, just in general, that's such a breath of fresh air for the season, and it needed something to be different because Michael was gone, and it was so fresh in people's minds and hearts as it was airing. So I like that group of episodes. I would say it's.
Well, I'll take I don't know if this is going to be a controversial pick or not, but I really enjoyed the pool party at Robert California's house.
Yeah.
Because you get like so many different storylines going on. You got Robert giving his weird tour. Andy's still trying to flirt with Aaron.
Other way around. Aaron trying to get Andy's attention.
Yes. And Aaron's trying to get Andy's attention.
And she's using Dwight.
Yes.
It's playing chicken. Yes. Yeah. And then was it Kevin jumps in and is playing chicken with Kathy.
Yeah.
And then Kathy's like, what? I'm blanking on everyone's name tonight.
That's the first
Can Daryl swim? He's like,
that's racist.
I don't know. Is it because he's black?
But I would say, looking at him, no, he doesn't swim.
No, he doesn't.
That's Valerie. That episode is the first seeds of, if you don't count the whole like is Kathy hot one, because after that they still have the Christmas episode where Kathy wants to move desk clumps. So she isn't in like I want to get with Jim mode, but that is the first seeds of her wanting Jim, because when they're like gonna do chicken, she's like, okay, I'll play. Where's Jim? This is my partner.
Yeah.
And then it's just funny, Kevin ripping his shirt off, like, I'll play. I think the only time you ever see Creed, it's like the perfect Creed. He's like wearing a crown and playing the ukulele, I think, at some point.
Yep.
That episode's also good because when Robert's giving the tour, underneath the wine bottles, when Oscar drinks his in one of the scenes, you can see it says Oscar on the bottom of the wine thing. So it's just like one of those like glimpses of props that they use and how they mark stuff.
Yep. And I believe the difference between a prop and a set dressing is a prop is anything that gets touched, but if it's just there and doesn't get touched, it's a set dressing.
Yeah. I did like too the little Toby part of like him picking the right wine and Oscar thinking he's this great wine enthusiast. You're playing a dangerous game, Toby.
Yeah.
One other episode that I think deserves a shout out is I did like the Halloween episode. But by the way, so Halloween, over 3 seasons of Halloween episodes, we see Jim and Pam's fight get worse and worse, because 3 seasons prior to this, they're kind of fighting about like why Danny Cordray didn't call Pam back, and they're like kind of going back and forth. And that the year after that, Pam believes in ghosts, and Jim's like, "What? My wife believes in ghosts," and that sort of thing. And then this one, they actually have a fight because he gave up this investor money and gave that full 10,000, so they're fighting over that.
Oh no! Don't you
And
remember they're fighting because Pam doesn't like Monster Mash? At least that's what Kevin thinks.
she really hates Monster Mash. And so I like that episode, but it was like it has my favorite Robert California. His little speech at the end when he's doing the whole story, incorporating all their fears, and then is like, "How dare we let fear control us?" And I loved that talking head.
Okay, the talking head was okay. His whole, I thought it was, I thought it was kind of dumb when he like was. I think it was too obvious when he was combining everybody's things.
I've liked it. I mean,
I
kind
did
of
like the
going for
part.
It was
obvious.
a good monologue. It was like how he did it, and then it just how he like went to every person and did it. And like one of the best parts when he's doing it is like he's describing a mummy,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a
and
mummy, and
Kevin's like
Kevin
so
doesn't get it.
oblivious to it, and then he's like, "It was a mummy, Kevin," and Kevin's like, "Oh." I think
And
that was
like,
good.
I'm only afraid of real things. I'm not afraid of things like ghosts or mummies. Mummies are real. No, they're not. They're in
Why-
museums. Why on earth would they put a mummy in a museum?
But okay, Meredith is scared of Jim. Yet when she came back from getting her cast, she was singling Jim out, wanting Jim to sign her pelvis.
Okay, Mister, call out the inconsistencies.
That's what we have. We're on a TV show podcast. I think we can just go
There's
full
quite a
nerd.
few inconsistencies in The Office, but
There are.
Yep.
and there's a big one that comes out in that I want to say in season 9.
Okay.
All right, we'll go to season 9 then. So season 9, we'll just start again with best opening, and the clear winner for me,
Yep. Only one on my list.
Asian Jim.
Asian Jim. Yep. You cut off till I said it.
Yes, Asian Jim. I love it. Like the details that go into it are just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Plus, Randall Park is so funny.
Yeah.
I
And he was-
still see memes like that. It's like,
Yeah.
look at modern technology and it has like Jim and the Asian guy must have been in the same TV show. It's like the same actor could be playing two different characters. Like they still talk about it, or I still see memes about it.
And Randall Park at that point, he was relatively unknown, because he didn't really start to be in a lot of stuff until a little bit later.
Yeah, he was probably on. I think Fresh Off the Boat was just starting up, or was started the year after, or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, he wasn't in the MCU yet.
Nope. that's the pinnacle. That's where you know you've made it.
So Jim and Jim are both in the MCU now,
That
and
is
they
true.
both went against Scarlet Witch.
and well, no, one of them won, one of them lost.
But that's because Scarlet Witch was kind of on Asian Jim's side. I don't know why I'm calling him that instead of Randall Park, but so yeah, and that like that's not the most gifable moment for me, but I mean it's up or most memeable. Like the props on you for not seeing. I've seen so many memes.
Yeah, I think it's that, or actually I have 3, but Andrew, what do you have for best memeable moment?
I don't know if it's a memeable moment, but my favorite moment probably in the whole season is the end of this. It's like almost at the very end of the whole show. It's the last episode, and Andy does this quote. He says, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them."
Yeah,
that like just sticks with me because it's like, how often do we talk about like the good old days? And while we were in it, we didn't realize like these were like the times of our lives that we would remember and cherish. So I really like that line from Andy, especially because Andy, season 9, Andy is very unlikable in season 9, and I feel like in the season finale they actually made him Andy again. I feel like and likable.
Yeah,
and like he does this, and then he does like this line, and it's such a perfect line because I mean it's the end of the series, and you're like you look back after he says this, and you're like, wow, yeah, this show is done, and I mean in their lives obviously within the show are changing too. So
out of everybody's lines in the finale, I think that is the best one.
There's that whole like part where we just really resonate with that. So we're like, wait, am I in the good old days? Am I really appreciating what I've got right now while I have it?
Yeah. Well, there's a few different times in my life when I could consider the good old days, and I'm sure there are going to be some in the future too.
Yeah. And good old days take different forms. There's some really good old days that I have that I was like, I loved those, but I didn't have my kids yet.
Right.
And there's times that I have my kids, I'm like, I love
Yeah.
age.
No,
and
that's
yet
such
I'm
a-
also going to love it when they're older too.
No, you're exactly right, Max. I mean, I remember, you get back with your college buddies and you start reminiscing about the crazy stuff you did back in college. And you're like, man, I miss those times. But then you think about it again, you're like, do I really miss those times? It's like I love it. I love reminiscing about it. But like you said, Matt, like as you get older, I'm in a part of my life, or like we're always in the good old days, some part of our life, right?
Yes.
'Cause we're always we'll look back at these times and say and reminisce and say that was a really good part of my life.
Yeah.
You might not like
Like,
consciously know it right now.
Yeah, like I don't want to
Well-
go back to that time, but I have fond memories of it.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind vacationing in that time. Every now
I've
and
said that
then.
exact same thing. I've said that exact same thing.
Oh,
I could
for
vacation
sure.
back to like my when I was in high school and I had like my awesome bedroom with everything in it and no bills. That'd be cool.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
Spend like a
Memes at
week
you.
there and then I'd come back.
Yeah.
I've got some juicy memes that are right off the printer here, although the show is 10 years old. But I haven't seen this used as a meme, and I think this would be a great meme. So there's at one point when they're looking at the promos, and then they're looking at the Danish one in particular, and they're like, whoa, they actually got a lot more footage we realized that they got. And then they're all kind of talking about that, and everyone looking at the computer then stops, and they look up at the camera. And I think that's a great gif for like, if someone sends you something really stupid online or whatever, or like something really crappy, or like one of those links that you're just like, why did you send me this? That's a great like hit back at them.
It reminds me of that moment in the original Scooby-Doo theme song where like all five of them like look up at the camera in the same exact way. You know what I'm talking
Yes. What a reference to make.
about? Yeah.
I've got another one, but Brian, I'll let you jump here first, then I'll share my last one.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's two more. There's Michael saying that's what she said when they reveal he's in the finale, and then I love the roll call on the work bus.
My name is Kevin, and that's my name. My name is because that's my.
I would have loved to see more of those.
They call
We
me
saw
Kevin.
Pam and Kevin. Did we see anybody
that's my
else?
name.
Have you heard the story about like how Jenna Fisher saved everyone's life in that episode?
I may have, but refresh
So
me.
that episode was directed by Bryan Cranston, aka Walter White, and
To me, he's still Hal, but go ahead.
there was some sort of like either carbon monoxide or gas or some sort of leak in the air. And so all the actors are on this bus contained, and no one's noticing this gas leak, except for then Jenna Fisher's like, wait, something smells off. And like that intuition causes everyone to be like, oh, wait, no, something is off. We need to get off the bus now. Come to find out, if they would have stuck in there, they all would have passed out. They all could have died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Good job, Jenna Fisher. And your
I'm sure
final.
they'll talk about that when they get to that in The Office Ladies, but they're still in season 7.
Yeah. Yeah, she'll take her victory lap. Guys, I saved your life. You're welcome.
Yeah.
The finale, the episode right before finale, when Jim is the assistant, or looking for the assistant to the assistant regional manager.
Yeah.
And Dwight's talking about him as his number 2, and like it's a no nonsense office, and then Jim just shows up the 5 days since no nonsense for any nonsense gif, and I love that joke. I just think that is right picking to throw into any conversation you're having with someone.
And the one that would have, so I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but for listeners, go and find this on YouTube. This is a clip that just resurfaced in the past year. I always knew that this was written, but I never knew it was filmed. It was a cold open that was cut out of the final episode. It was an elaborate Matrix prank that Jim and Pam do on Dwight to make him think he's in the Matrix. And it's super elaborate. They even have Hank, the security guard, playing the part of Morpheus, Morpheus's brother. And it goes this whole thing, and then Dwight's like, no, you know what? I'll stay in the Matrix. Things are going well. I'm the manager. I like my life. And it's like, without realizing it, like turned Jim's prank against him. And it was not in the DVD. It was never in any deleted scenes or anything. So I never thought they filmed it. And then when they started doing the Superfan episodes, they released that clip on YouTube, and you can find it now. So go ahead, if you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch that.
There's another clip of that same episode, like right before the final thing. They go plant a tree outside.
They do?
They do, yes.
Huh.
Like one of the trees in the office is actually real, and so they actually go plant it outside in the.
Huh. I'll have to look that up.
And I imagine that that's like them actually planting that tree, and they just filmed it because it's like when they did
When they did that, what?
like, oh, there was only supposed to be the people in the office, and it's actually like the crew of the office as well in that group picture in that finale.
Yeah,
Like,
and what you can obviously, you can clearly see Greg Daniels, but then
Yeah.
everyone else we don't recognize is important to them.
yes, exactly.
Mhm.
And so I thought that was a great moment to have too. Let's look at some, like, I feel like that's probably the best episode. You guys might have other feelings, but I felt like the finale is
Yeah, I think
Alone?
it's easily the finale. I mean, the other choice would have been Work Bus for me, but I think for all the downfalls of season 9, I think they did a really great finale. And I love the scene at the end where they're all in the office and they're playing the music and they have all the talking heads. I think it's a really good cold open, or not cold open, a good finale, good epilogue. And I will admit, okay, I'm not a super big like crier at movies, but what gets me is TV show finales always get me teared up, and that one gets me every time. I will admit.
Yep.
It's hard to beat. I mean, it's the end of it, right? And I feel like they wrap stuff up pretty well for the show, and it just hits you in all the different feels, right? Because it's such a solemn moment in a sense because it's the end of the show, but you still see everyone's like flavor, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like the zoom in of Creed saying his thing, and then like it zooms out and he's like getting escorted out by
By the police.
the police. And so it's like, even though it's like a serious moment, they still like get everyone's personality really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually tear up early in the episode. I tear up during when Joan Cusack comes up and she is talking to Aaron about her mother, and Aaron has that slow realization. Is like, oh, wait, this is my mom.
Okay,
and just the way they sell
I need
that
to
is
speak
good.
to that. That part, it's good, but the more I see, it's like anybody could have come out and said, "I'm your mom and your dad." They didn't. She just like jumped in and said, "Oh yeah, you are my mom and dad," right? It's like she was just so willing to accept the first person to say that they're her mom and dad.
Yeah.
True,
Suspension of disbelief, but yeah, good point.
but I think that they actually are. We're gonna
Just saying.
Yeah.
They did a DNA test, Andrew. Obviously, right as soon as it was done, they did a DNA test.
Yeah. Off screen, they did all that.
Yeah, 100%. It totally happened.
You know, also on the DVD, they have a feature where the cast are talking about the finale and how what the show means to them. And it's funny, even David Denman, who played Roy, was like, "I don't know why I'm tearing up. I've been off the show for a while."
Yeah. Episode of the show.
Repeat what you just said.
100% best episode of the season. The last couple episodes, like once Dwight is made manager, I felt like the season was really, really good.
Yeah.
Like the last 3 episodes, it was tremendous.
Yes, in the penultimate episode, when Daryl is doing his dance with everybody, that's also a really cool moment.
Yes, that's a good moment.
Yeah, so and the DVD when Jim is telling Dwight and giving him that advice, but Jim is also the same advice would apply to how he feels about Pam during that whole splice. Like all of that is done really well too.
Mm.
So worst episode then? Any of the other ones? No, worst episode of the season. What do you think?
I mean, an easy answer would be The Farm, because it's basically another show that they tried to make with a cold open that was The Office.
I disagree. I liked The Farm because it was unique and it was something different.
I guess
I would say
sorry,
I guess my least favorite might not be a specific episode. It's just Andy being a complete like jerk. I don't know. There's just maybe that's not the right spot to talk about it, but it's like Andy just season 9. Andy is just like he starts off okay, but it's like that whole boat thing that he does, and like
Yeah.
probably when he leaves on the boat because he did how long to get Aaron back, and then he just like blows her off right for this boat thing, and like just stays there and like doesn't contact her and just like makes her feel awful. Like I just think that's so. I mean, I get why they did it because I'm pretty sure that was like when he was filming The Hangover 3.
Yeah, yeah, that's why.
But it's
There's
like,
other
could you?
ways to take him off. There's other
Yeah,
ways to
there.
pull him.
I feel like there was yes, Matt. I agree. I feel there's better ways to take him off, and it doesn't go with how I feel like Andy and Aaron's relationship worked. It's
They,
like
yeah, they could have had him be there like over. It wouldn't have been Zoom at that point. It would have been Skype probably, but like having little scenes here and there. They could have filmed a bunch of those at once, or even had him film a couple remote things while filming The Hangover, and put him in kind of like how they had Hitchcock in Brooklyn Nine-Nine the last season. They could have done something like that back then.
Yeah, 100%. And so that, I mean, that's probably for us the worst storyline is everything they did with Andy. It just really sucked. And so, like, one episode where I felt like he was at his worst before the boat stuff would be Here Comes Trouble. Like this whole like argument with Broccoli Rob, and like you see the most insecure parts of him. You know, he hated to see like the fight that they had and him just freaking out over not being able to sing his solo of faith, and like he's living it. He's trying to live those good old days in the worst way possible.
Mm-hmm. The other two contenders for worst storyline, obviously everything with the camera guy. I think universally,
yes.
like, do we really need it? Do we really need this?
I love that you brought that up, Brian. It's like, okay, I get like the last season they're kind of showing it off as like, okay, it is a documentary and it needs to end, but why do you bring in the cameraman or the boom guy then, right? Like there was plenty of, okay, I get like Pam's gonna get attacked by that one jerk guy that does the butt painting or whatever, and she retaliated. But there was plenty of times like, okay, where were they intervening? One when Roy was about to attack Jim.
Exactly.
Or why didn't they go help Andy when he's floating out in the lake in like season 2?
Or when Angela hires a hitman.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you bring in the boom guy that like at the end. It's like it was such an unneeded storyline.
Yeah.
Because Pam wasn't sad in those moments.
And then the other part about that storyline that I didn't like was just how it ended. It didn't like they're leading up to he is in love with Pam. And so everything that they do is to throw him as the wrench for Pam. And yet there's not a moment of Pam rejecting him. Like, yeah, she walks out, but it's not like this outright, like, he needs to have like I did all this for you, or like something like that. And instead, when he visits him, she's asking about like how much they recorded them, and then she's asking him about like, do you think Jim has changed over the years and all that? And there's no like him trying to get with Pam for her to reject him and choose Jim.
Yeah. I mean, we knew that they were never going to actually break up Jim and Pam at the end.
Yeah. And maybe that's what they were thinking. That's why they didn't do that. But you built up to it. So just see it through.
Yeah. And another thing that I thought was kind of a bland storyline was adding Pete and Clark. Because I think it's too late in the game to be adding main characters. I mean, Clark was annoying. Pete was just bland. We didn't really need either of them. You know, and especially that scene the scene at the end. I mean, I like the scene where they're all in the office, except I don't really think that Pete or Clark kind of earned their spot to be there. We've seen them for one season. You know, Erin joined in season 6, so we had, you know, enough time with her to make her feel part of the group. But even, you know, like Gabe and Nellie, they weren't in that end scene. It was all of our core people, minus Michael, of course, and with Pete and Clark.
I at least liked Clark. I liked some of his jokes. Like he has that skeevy part in the second episode when he's like wants Erin to come over and like lure her over. Like that's gross.
He also does the whole Jan thing.
Yeah, but that
whatever
I totally forgot about that. Oh, man.
That's funnier than like him trying to groom Erin. But then he's got some great lines. Like just when Packer laces the cupcakes, like, not my best night. but not my worst night.
Yeah.
He's got a couple lines I really like. So I felt like he was a fine addition. Pete and Aaron's storyline was like, okay, why even introduce them? Why give them a storyline together that wasn't satisfactory? And at worst, it made the Andy Aaron storyline suck a lot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm surprised none of you guys said the Jim and Pam that you felt that was the worst.
Well, that's kind of going along with the boom guy, but
yeah,
what
I'll speak to that. Is I get that they're farther in their marriage, they have kids in this, but there was a time where what's that game that they were playing and Jim is like in Philly and Pam's like, I like Philly Jim. I want more of Philly Jim.
Oh, Second Life.
Second Life. And then Jim does this, but she also should know that Jim takes these big risks. Mm-hmm. He bought a house without telling her. Like, he does this stuff for like his family,
mm-hmm.
Or what he thinks is right. But that, and he was so supportive of her doing the whole art thing.
Yeah.
Maybe he hid it from her because it was still like starting up.
Yeah.
So maybe if he was more honest, whatever. And I think he should have been more honest because their whole relationship was like telling each other everything, right? It's like him hiding something like that didn't seem like the norm. Like they forced an issue in the show between the two people, right?
Yeah.
Where we know there really shouldn't be anything forced because of just their nature of their relationship over the years. And then they obviously get married.
Here's the difference I see with Jim supporting her art and her not supporting his Philly stuff is that they didn't have kids when
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
I get that, Matt. And having kids myself, I understand it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's like I said, if he would have told her up front what he was doing, I think she would have been more supportive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's good. I like that the resolution of it was so good that like I really like the idea when he's going to get in the cab and then he decides he's going to hug her and then she's like, I don't know if I'm going to hug you back, and like then like recommit. Like that's a good moment. And the DVD, that's a good moment. And then even in the episode with the DVD, for her to be like, I feel bad and I'm finally at a place when I can be on with this and I want to choose this for him because he chose her already, and then she finally comes around and says, I can choose him. I felt like that was a good way to resolve it, and so I didn't hate that storyline so much, but I can see why people didn't like it.
Yeah, although that ending can kind of transition into my best storyline unless you guys have anything else.
Go ahead.
I think my best storyline is Dwight as manager. I think it would have been not great if it happened earlier in the seasons in the show. But I think we finally got to that point. That was Dwight's trajectory. It's like what Dwight wanted. Like even in that cut cold open, he's like, I'm okay staying in the Matrix because like I'm finally secure with myself and who I am as manager. And when Jim and Pam went to go quit, Dwight's like, you're fired for the severance. He finally gets to fire Jim, but it's for a positive reason.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that will tie into what I wanted to say about best storylines. I like the Jim and Dwight dynamic. You talked about that with season 8 and their friendship. They really develop it well in season 9. Like the bus trip or work bus is a good one to highlight that, where Dwight lashes out a little bit too much at Jim, and Jim's like, no, I'm not against you. I'm not your enemy. I'm not winning this. I just want to give my wife pie. Help me out here.
Right.
Yeah.
And like Dwight confides in him that he doesn't have any kids or anything. And I like the storyline of him finally realizing he wants Angela.
Yeah.
And Angela wants Dwight. It's like, it kind of was like that whole pent up thing, the awkward thing that like somehow worked throughout the whole show when they were having their little love thing throughout the seasons.
Yeah.
But it's like them coming back together was such a good moment. And it helped. I feel like it helped Dwight's character grow to be able to be like the manager, right? Better, and be the character that needed to be for when Dwight was manager.
Mm.
So
It's kind of like how Michael and Holly were a good couple because they were compatible amounts of dorkiness. It's like
yes.
Angela and Dwight are compatible amounts of really being messed up.
They're so opposite, but yet somehow it works so well.
Mm.
It's a strange relationship, that's for sure.
And I forget where I heard this, but it's like Angela was like the last character who kind of got some kind of redemption. Like they even in the last season, they even brought back Roy to redeem Roy,
Yep.
but it's like they find that Angela was always just kind of like the annoying one around the office against people, being a stickler, and they finally kind of let her soften up at the very end.
Yes, I like that they did that because they showed um her actual true self of
Yeah.
who she actually is in like real life.
Mm-hmm.
The actress for that, right,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
she's not like that grumpy, like
No. She's like the
she
least like her
she
character.
plays that character so well, but it's nice to see that they gave her an opportunity to kind of be like her normal self
Mm-hmm.
in the show. So I think that was kind of cool to see too
Yeah.
at the end.
Like behind the scenes thing, and this I heard from the Office ladies in the season 2 Christmas episode when Angela keeps getting madder and madder as Michael's turning it into like a booze fest. The director would say, "All right, everybody happy, Angela pissed, let's go."
That's good direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny that all of our storylines have to do with Dwight for the best, that he was like the MVP of season 9.
He was.
And like Dwight being manager, and then like what I was talking about with Jim and Dwight, and Jim being second in command and like loving it. That
Yes.
is such good TV, and it makes me be like, maybe Dwight should have been the manager when Michael left, and that we should have got that for 2 seasons. And I wonder what would have happened with that, because that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a very interesting transition if they would have done that, right away.
Mhm.
Give the Dwight the manager role.
Yeah. I wonder what they would have done with Andy then.
I think going back to Dwight is I think he was too power hungry at that moment, right? Because he was given a chance to be interim manager, and it went so to his head, right? He had to accept the fact in season 9 that he might never be manager and be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And once he understood that and was okay with it, that's when he was able to become manager. So I think he had to overcome that mindset that he deserves to be manager and accept the fact that if he gets it, great. If he doesn't, he's okay. He doesn't need that to define himself.
Yeah. Well, there's been 2 previous times when Dwight got a taste of manager. When Michael thought that he was going to get the corporate position, and Dwight was painting the office black and doing the shroot bucks. And then, like you said, in season 7, when he was acting manager for a day and shot off the gun, and then Joe took that from him. So it's like we see his progression to how he would be as manager, and like you said, he was finally ready for it.
Yeah, but he still had his quirks, like the steam and the outside and the security codes and all that sort of stuff. It's still very much Dwight, but in a controlled way now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good stuff. Any other thoughts about season 9 or season 8 that we didn't cover?
Not really. I think we've called it out for its worst, but I think we all agree that it's not the absolute worst.
Yeah. I think my wife would be, if she was in this, she would talk more about its negatives.
Yes.
But after rewatching it again and where my standards were, I'm like, there's a lot to like in this. There's a lot of good stuff.
That's where I go with people. It's like if you watched it, when it was airing on TV, you would have hated these seasons, right? Because just this raw nature of Michael leaving and just being fresh, like it's hard still to watch Michael leave and like that moment. But then like because what's going to happen and how it ends, you can appreciate season 8 and 9 and enjoy. Okay, they go to Tallahassee. They kind of go off on these kind of wild tangents or do different things. And I think Michael does has a really good one of his 2 lines right in season 9. He's like, all his children grew up and married each other.
Yeah.
Not that they married each other part, but
yeah,
I mean, if you look back, just in the sense of these actors and actresses, a lot of them were, I mean, even Michael, right? They were really nobodies when this
Mhm.
show started. Like
Yeah.
This show, most
Steve,
of them were famous because of the show.
right? Like
Steve Carell had a decent amount of fame
he
behind
did, but
him,
but he did have the level of like, wasn't season 2 when he filmed 40-Year-Old Virgin or something?
Yep, and that saved the show.
So it's like, sure, he had some exposure, but nobody had the like. There was no like well known name people. And now look at like these people, right? Like
Yeah,
John Krasinski can't be in something without saying, "Hey, that's Jim," right?
yeah,
Even though he's done so many different roles and like one of the biggest, he's a very big actor.
yeah.
I mean, not a lot of them like went on and did a lot of stuff afterwards, to my knowledge.
I think
To
Ed
top of,
Helms and John Krasinski probably have been
yeah,
the
Ed Helms.
most.
Well,
Ed Helms
BJ
did a lot.
Novak just had a movie this year that he
Yeah,
directed. He was in. Jake Lacey, who played Pete, is actually blowing up in the TV circuit right now. He has 2 streaming shows that are big
Okay.
right now. And last year he filmed the first season of White Lotus, and he was in that. And so it's like
Okay.
even him, he's. And the
Mhm.
actress who played Erin, she was in a number of movies as well. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
there's a
Ellie
lot of
Kemper.
them that are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like this show really propelled people
Mhm.
careers, and it was fun to see their progression from the early seasons to what
Yeah.
they were, and they grew up in front of everybody,
Yeah.
and their lives changed, and they
Oh yeah.
some of them drifted apart, and I mean, and that happens over the course of just natural progression in life, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
people start moving away and doing different things, and
But
that's what
from-
you see, especially in season like 9, is people start leaving, and it's hard to bring them all back together, and then you get Andy's like famous line, right? Of
Good old
wishing you knew
days.
where you were in the good old days before you actually left them.
Like with their podcast, both the Office Ladies and with Brian Baumgartner's podcast, it seems like they're all on good terms with each other. It's just like they're all doing their own careers, and it's hard to get together. Like they still have an Office Fantasy Football League that's still going with all the guys from there.
Nice.
Yeah, I know like everyone wants like them to come back and do something for The Office, right? Um,
I think
I
it's
agree.
fine that they don't.
Me
I
too.
think it's good that they don't, right? Because you don't want them to come back and ruin something,
Mhm.
right? If they get the flavor wrong or they do something wrong, it would be fun to see them, do current event stuff, because like they did so many current event stuff in The Office, right? Like
Mhm.
how funny would it be to like see how Dwight handled COVID, like
Mhm.
right away,
Yeah.
and just all these different events that went on, just to see how each character would have handled it so differently.
Yeah.
Would have been fun to see in the trends that they could have talked about and done, but
Yeah.
the show aired at a perfect time, in my opinion, and they had I don't think the show could survive in its glory in today's culture.
No.
It also it made cringe humor mainstream.
Yes.
And we didn't have that until
Well,
Office came along.
Right, because then like Parks and Rec came out. They had a lot of like these different shows that kind of were on the same line.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah. Have you
I feel like
guys seen?
Go
Have
ahead,
you guys
Brian,
seen
you go.
the show the Gabriel Iglesias show was on Netflix? He had called Mr. Iglesias.
Mm-mm.
The show it's okay, not great. I mean, his stand up is better, but Oscar is on that show, and the character Oscar plays is very Dwight like that's like second in command, just very stickler. I'm wondering, like, was he like channeling Rainn Wilson when he was being that character in that show?
I channel Rainn Wilson as often as I can. I have to do a rain dance first to be able to do that. That joke just wrote itself. All right. Well, we're gonna move on to trivia. That was as good a place as we can figure out to leave it. But we'll move on to trivia. And so last week's trivia, real quick, we talked about Cobra Kai, and the actor Thomas Ian Griffith, I think that's his name, who played Terry Silver. He took a break from acting. He actually retired from acting for a little bit before coming back in Cobra Kai. And in the meantime, he was doing something else. And what was he doing in that time? he was writing. So he was a writer, and like his big break for writing was actually on the TV show Grimm, if you ever saw that. So he was one of the writers there. And then he came back for Cobra Kai. So there you go. What is this week's trivia, Andrew?
So this week's trivia is coming from season 9 of The Office. In the finale, Ryan has a kid, surprisingly, and his kid is allergic to something. And Ryan exploits it. What is Ryan's kid allergic to?
Rainn Wilson. I think we all are.
Drake, which is a combination of Drew and Blake, not named after the singer.
Yes.
Just a dumb
Gosh.
joke.
Just as pretentious as always. Like he has like 4 or 5 lines in the finale, and they're all pretentious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. It was great to have you on here. Thank you. If you've been listening to our Office podcast, then we love that you've been with us for this whole time. If you liked this podcast, you might like our villain episode that we did a couple weeks ago, or last week. No, 2 weeks ago. You might like that villain episode, and we've got some other ones. Like I said, Cobra Kai we did. That was wonderful. And so listen to some of those and see what you think. Let us know, are there other things that we should talk about? And I think this is going to air pretty close to Thanksgiving, so enjoy your Thanksgiving meal. We're going to have some Thanksgiving themed episodes coming up, and so it'll be pretty good. But until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.